Hi there, folks. My name's NovaWing24, and welcome to another long overdue episode of the grumpiest simulation talk show on YouTube and on podcasts. With, of course, me, your host, NovaWing24, grumpy as ever. And it wouldn't be the three Grumpy Simmers if I wasn't joined by my two fellow grumpies. First off, we have the editor-in-chief, founder, and Don of the Helicopter Mafia, Sergio from Helisimmer.com.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that colorful presentation.
I am not gonna lie. I am not gonna lie. It is always concerning to me that I have horrific nightmares of one day waking up with a Jesus nut in my bed. Like, it's just, it is a genuine fear that I have. So I have to make sure that the Helicopter Mafia is pleased.
It may happen.
The Helico Mafia.
And, of course, rounding out the triumvirate of grumpiness is, of course, the famed Tomcat aficionado, purple hat wearing, storytelling genius that is Drew BelGeode.
You had me at Tomcat, you lost me at Genius. If I were Genius, I'd be able to figure out Sim Market's update app thingy and actually get my planes installed so that I can do next week's Microsoft Flight Simulator video. Unfortunately, I'm getting too old for this crap.
Aren't we all? That's why, folks, we are called the Three Grumpy Simmers, because we are three. There's three of us. We're old and we're cranky. Anyway, so the great question, of course, of the week is, what is it that our Grumpy Trio is so grumpy about this week and this month? And, well, we've chosen a topic that we have discussed previously, but it felt, with recent releases across the various sim platforms that we all subscribe to, that it felt like a good time to revisit it. And of course, I am talking about the idea of tempering one's expectations. And that is a Pandora's box that I'm kind of nervous to open up, but I feel, and we all feel, is a very appropriate time to bring up. Now, we are going to lead into this Pandora's box by discussing the long-awaited, much aligned, and infinitely played with the commentary of 2 more weeks as the release date, of the recent release of X-Plane 12 into early access / beta. And I think this is essentially going to be the crux of probably what we're going to be spending the next few minutes talking about. So I will be the first to admit here that I actually do not have X-Plane 12 at this time, because my personal relationships with X-Plane is a dynamic relationship that we have, and I'll be honest, I really enjoy X-Plane, but I generally join X-Plane when the version is more well established, i.e. full release. So I'm going to be deferring, but of course that does not mean I have not been immune to seeing the considerable discussion within the flight simulation community about some of the user experiences, shall we say, of the first few weeks since release. So I guess the question to throw to you two gentlemen, who of course have been flying X-Plane 12 a fair bit. I guess, what has been your take on, well, first of all, what are some of the things that we are all seeing in community feedback and community commentary since the X-Plane 12 beta release?
Probably sum it up.
Yeah.
We could probably sum it up in, I don't want to say 2 words, maybe just some digits. What was it again? 11.60 keeps coming up an awful lot. And you can tell a lot of it is from people who are relatively new to the whole X-Plane community thing and don't quite get how X-Plane has operated for like the past 20 years.
Oh God, is it that old?
It's been around that long. It's literally been around that long.
Yeah.
But yeah, those who weren't there when we switched from X-Plane 10 to X-Plane 11 have obviously forgotten that we went through the exact same thing. Every time that big number changes by 1, so when it goes from 10 to 11, 11 to 12, it is a new version of the sim. They're totally within their right to charge you for it. All the incremental updates, 10.1, 10.2, 11.1, 11.2, so on and so forth, those are what you get for free. And a lot of people in the community who I guess came in over like the last couple of years or so since X-Plane 11 has been out, because we all know X-Plane 11 had been the king of the hill for a little while there, as we've experienced in the years that we were going to Flight Sim Expo and so on. But those who were not privy to a lot of that info, this is their first rodeo, is getting this switch over to 12. And what I'm seeing a lot of is, how can they justify this? How can they, charge us the full price admission for this thing that's basically just 11.60? What improvements have they even done? When if you really look into the nitty-gritty, there are a crap ton of improvements that have come to the sim. But, there's always a finger wag, and, there's always a caveat. It's far from perfect. The same way X-Plane 11 was far from perfect. So, in a way, the community does have a valid point when they talk about, all the crazy stuff that's going on. But by the same token, does that mean that Laminar Research has been ripping us off a month by charging us $60 or $50 or whatever for a brand new version of the sim when it doesn't look like they did a damn thing to it? No, I don't think they're ripping us off in that department. I think they still have a lot of work to do, but then there's a lot of new stuff that they're trying now with the sim that honestly they didn't really have a clue how to do years ago. And it's just now getting integrated into the sim. I will say this, though. I'm extremely enjoying the Tomcat. I'm really glad that they brought the Tomcat in. Is it Heatblur Simulations DCS quality? Hell no. Did I expect it to be? No. But you know what? It's in between Heatblur and DC designs for MSFS. I like the DC designs. I love the Heatblur. This fits nice and neat in the middle. It's got just enough systems to make it dangerous, just enough flight model to make it realistic, and the textures are okay. That's about all I can say. I mean, you can tell Laminar skimped on that aspect of it, but as far as everything else, it's fine. The flip side, though, VR. Because that's my mainstay. That's pretty much what the channel is about anymore since like 2017. VR sucks.
Well, you heard it here first,
There's
folks.
no other way. There's no other way to put it. The performance in VR currently sucks. And don't get me wrong, I don't have a monster beastly rig from 2021. My rig is getting old. It's getting long in the tooth, kind of like me. Not to mention, I'm still running this sucker here, the Oculus Rift S. It's been discontinued for a couple of years now. You can't get these things new. So in spite of that, X-Plane 11's VR experience was a hell of a lot smoother and, gave me a lot better performance than X-Plane 12's. And of course, the caveat applies, make sure that you're reporting whatever bugs that you find. I do my due diligence. I'm not new to the whole beta, alpha testing experience. I know what it is that needs to be done. But suffice to say, we've had 6 updates now, and I've steadily been seeing the VR experience getting worse. I'm a little worried. Especially since, it took us till X-Plane 11.20 before we even had VR in the first place. I don't want to see them put it so far on the back burner that, it gets left behind or the ball gets dropped. But I have faith. It's Laminar. I know they're going to pull it out. It's just a matter of when.
So the question is though is that and you covered a lot of ground with that one, especially talking about things like the whole new features or things that might not be obvious but take a lot of work in the background when people rev up and things like that. But at the end of the day, one of the things that I at least comes to my mind when I think about this when we sort of when we're tempering our expectations about the content is that the first thing I look at is that this is in beta. Like that's literally the first thing I look at, and it was much like when MSFS like first released. Although it was a full release, even they said, "Hey, this first 12 months it's going to be out. It's really nothing more than a beta," and that's kind of how I look at Explain 12. Is that we're very aware that I'm very aware of a beta, which is why I'm not buying into it until we get to a stable release. So in terms of tempering expectations, and much like we've seen, that's it's concerning with the VR, but at the same time, it's like, as you said, you've got faith that it's going to come there because they're still working on it. Like there's still things are being released on a regular basis. So it for me, I always get surprised when people sort of say about, oh, this aeroplane doesn't work, or that aeroplane doesn't work, or this scenery is broken, or I can't do this anymore. There's no tire smoke. And it's like, well...
that is a real complaint. There is no tire smoke. I landed my Tomcat. Where was it? San Diego. What was the one place in San Diego? Miramar, I think. There was no tire smoke on my Tomcat. Sergio, get him.
I just
call up Austin right now.
I go to throw a joke in, and it turns up being a legitimate complaint. That's terrifying. Anyway, but it's that to me, it just seems a bit odd that the actually I say that it's odd, but at the same time. We've all seen it before, where the communities seem to have got this thing where it's like, oh, as you say, we're being ripped off. This doesn't work or that doesn't work. It's like, well, fly X-Plane 11, like until it's out of beta, or fly DCS, fly MSFS. Like again, like there is no, and this is completely squirrel. But yeah, there is no one sim to rule them all. Like we all three of us here all fly a variety of different sims, because each one is good at a certain particular thing, and that's something that I always struggle with the community. It's like, it's okay. We have plenty of other sims out there that we can fly while we're waiting for them to iron the bugs out. Like so I don't know. Am I being naive with this expectation that people should be tempering their expectations?
Maybe we are. Maybe we are. Seriously, let's take a step back and look at it from the standpoint of Joe Schmo, average, flight simmer, or Jane Schmo, average flight simmer out there and whatnot. We, as the old guard, we've seen it all. We've come through the ringer, in a lot of cases. We were there for like the first alpha tests and beta tests of many iterations ago of a lot of these flight sims and, of course, add-ons and products and so on that have come. We know how this all works. We've watched this entire playing field evolve over the last, 20 years? Can any of us actually say that the way things are done right now is exactly the same way that it was done when we were first getting into flight simming?
No, it absolutely. It's a very different world right now.
It's a completely different world. So maybe we are the anachronisms. Maybe because of the fact that we're now old and grumpy, maybe we're just looking at all of this wrong. I don't know. I'm going to throw it out to the viewing audience how they feel about it as well, because I don't know. It just feels to me like we're looking at it wrong. Maybe we should be siding with them and understanding why, people have a right to complain about all of this stuff.
But that's the irony of the thing, isn't it? We are the guys that lived in an age when games were released, they were released in its final format. They came in a DVD, and it wasn't an early access thing. It wasn't the beta. Yeah, guys had access to beta. I had access to FSX beta because I was included in the beta program. I got a DVD from Microsoft or something like that, or a download link or something like that. And I participated in the beta. It was a beta. No one else had access to it. Nowadays, people have access to alphas, betas, early access, and all that stuff. So it's pretty normal for them. Why is it that we dinosaurs understand it, but they don't? They live through this. This is how software is delivered and developed nowadays. Everybody gets, everybody spends money on early access. And that's another thing as well. This is Explain 12 isn't it isn't a beta yet either. Laminar Research or whoever calls it a beta, but this is early access, meaning that it's perhaps not an alpha version, but it's not a beta version either, because there are the things in the sim that are not finished at all.
Because it's not feature complete yet, is it? It's not like Explain 12 is not feature complete, is it?
Well,
at least it's not tech. It doesn't have a few tech features completed. For example, Drew was talking about VR, and I think that a lot of these issues with VR has to do with the fact that they didn't optimize VRAM yet. So VDRAM. All right, so it's not optimized.
Yep.
It's blocking your graphics card, and it's using VRAM like crazy, and it eventually decreases the performance of the card and the performance in VR and whatnot. It's not just VR, but it's mostly noticeable in VR. So that's it as well. It's not even a beta. Okay, so and this generation should understand early access better than we do, because we come from a time in which we got the final release of the game, and if we were lucky, when the internet started blooming, we could download a couple of patches for the sim. I remember Microsoft Flight Simulator had two patches, SP1, SP2,
so
and then
two service
SP1
packs,
and SP2, yeah.
two service packs and one expansion, and Service Pack 2 was included as part of the expansion.
Exactly. And we were lucky back then. And nowadays, we are given early access to software, and we complain because the software is broken. Of course, it's broken. It's not finished. Come on, let's just grow up.
Right? And that's
in DCS.
Don't even ask how big the last update was for me when I fired up DCS. Don't. Just don't.
Now, let me be grumpy as hell and just twist a knife here, because there is something that I need to say. It needs to be said. This needs to be said. And I hope it's going to piss a lot of people. The single fact that people are saying Explain 12 is Explain 11.6, it's simply and only and just by the fact that it's not copying Microsoft Flight Simulator scenery. It's the only reason.
We went there.
People, for some reason, started thinking that after the release of Microsoft Flight Simulator, Laminar Research was going to partner up with Google, and they were going to use Google Maps. And
why?
We have a sim that was completely revamped. We have a sim that was completely revamped. Laminar Research pretty much redid the whole freaking simulator from the ground up. There are some stuff that they are using from the previous version, flight models, etc. But everything that is related to graphics, we have new clouds, we have a new light system. If you haven't watched Austin's videos about all this stuff, go watch it, because it talks about the fact that they are using they are actually analyzing light and using real light parameters and all that shenanigans that the Laminar Research will like to do to reflect the pure color on the fuselage or on the ground. You have water on the ground. You have seasons. We have seasons in Explain,
which is unheard of, and that blew me away. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not only seasons, but seasons on 3D modeled trees, not billboards.
Exactly. We have we have so many different things in the sim. But just because the sim doesn't come with scenery similar to Microsoft Flight Simulator, this is crap, this is Explain 11.6. I said this a few minutes ago, I'll say it again, grow up, guys. Now just look at things as they are.
And again, this is where, funny enough, this is another part of that whole tempering one's expectations thing. Is that okay? Well, what do you want out of your sim? Insert sim name here. What is your simming experience about? Because if your simming experience is about flying low and slow and looking at scenery, then Microsoft Flight Simulator is probably going to be the one to go to, because out of the box, it comes with pretty damn good scenery. It's photoreal terrain across the whole world. It's got dynamic seasons, and it has the occasional photogrammetry, which has its own, quirks.
We'll get into that in a moment.
Segue. So it has its own quirks, but if you're flying at 38,000 feet at Mach 0.8 in a tube liner, do you really care that there's photoreal scenery down there? Because I can't see anything down there. I just feel see a bit of a brown smudge.
But it matters. But it matters.
And
not for the reason you think it would, but it does matter.
So this is sort of where, think about tempering your expectations, because it's and look at the sim that works best for you. I've always respected Explain because of the amount of things you can mess with inside of it once you read up on it and get to figure out try to figure out the interesting dynamic / nightmare that is Austin's brain when you're trying to read the SDK documentation. The number of stuff that you can tweak inside Explain is insane. And that you can really tell that it was, it came to us from, as a PhD or a doctorate program, whatever it was that it originally started as. Like, that's an engineer's dream. It absolutely is. But for a lot of end users, it actually, they're barely, it's what are you looking for? What are you trying to get at? If you're wanting, and I still say that, at the moment, it would be and I'm totally appeasing the helicopter mafia here, but I personally, my limited, knowledge and understanding of helicopters, for me, it would be, Aerofly and then X-Plane would be the two go-tos for me for helicopters. We'll just park Aerofly because that's a whole nother conversation about expectations. But X-Plane was always
just going to say, yeah.
But X-Plane, I always enjoyed, and I know that I did several reviews for various X-Plane scenery in using helicopters, because helicopters in X-Plane were they weren't just a jet with weird flight physics. Like, it actually, with simple flight dynamics, I actually had to learn. Oh wait, I actually have to keep my foot pressed down to stop from spinning. Like, I found that challenging, and that for me was really invigorating and fun to fly. But I take that and go, okay, but then I looked at the other things, like, the billboard trees, for example. If I spend a lot of my time down low, so for me, I gravitated to MSFS because that's what appeals to me. But the system simulation in X-Plane is, I'm probably going to say is up there with DCS. Obviously, maybe not so much with the combat stuff, but it's that level of system simulation that's there. So again, it depends on what you're after, but please remember that this is an early access, beta, whatever you want to call it, product. It's not complete yet. If you and to go back to what Drew said as well, is that if you, it's a bit of a fork in the road here. If you sign up to a product when you know that it's in early access, when you know that it's in not feature complete, you sign up to that understanding that you either go, okay, you know what, I don't want to have to deal with the quirks, the bugs, the fact they're going to release a hotfix and a patch every couple of days, and none of my stuff's going to work in at the moment, and the dev support for it for third-party community is going to be fairly limited. I don't really want to have to deal with that, so I'm going to wait until it's done, it's finished. That's exactly the boat I'm in. I'm like, I'm happy to wait until it's done and then I'll pick it up. But if you do pick it up and then start complaining because there's my X-Plane 9 add-on that I brute forced into X-Plane 11 is suddenly now not working in X-Plane 12, or
I've genuinely seen that post in the last week. Let me just say, it's actually come up.
it's like when I used to see people complaining that they put FS9 models into prepared V5 and wondering why the prepared crashed. Anyway, so yeah, but complaining about that, or going, this is not working. It's broken, my sim, or my stuff's broken, and only complaining about it on fan forums.
Yeah.
If you signed on to doing the beta,
but they are official fan forums.
That's a whole other conversation that we don't need to have. I will just say this, since all three of us do run fan forums, if you run a post on one of our forums and I see it that says, how do I get a refund for X-Plane 12? I am deleting your post. If I gotta suffer, you gotta suffer. You knew what you were getting into when you bought that damn thing. Now, put in a bug report, shut the F up, and go fly.
and this is exactly it. So if you sign up to
unless,
that,
of course, you can't.
yeah, if you sign up to a beta release, then you accept there are going to be problems with it. You accept, it's literally in the user agreement that says big letters at the start that says, well, at least this is what it was when it was in the X-Plane 11 beta back in the day. I'm assuming it's still in the 12 one. This says big things. This is not a finished product. There will be issues with it. So, if you go buy into it knowing that and saying, so do your due diligence and be prepared to give that feedback, give it constructively to the developer, not bitch about it in a fan forum. Because the number of times that, as Drew said, we see people complaining about wanting refunds or saying, I have this problem. And literally the first question I will always ask you, if you post in one of the groups that I moderate, and if you post a question of, insert problem here has happened, what do I do? The literal first question I will come back with is, well, actually, the first two things I'll come back with, especially if it's a Microsoft Flight Simulator, is one, have you removed everything from your community folder? And two, have you lodged a ticket with Microsoft? That will literally be the two things. And I had somebody come back and say, well, that's what this forum's for. No, it's not. Like, we are here to help you, but also you need to report it as a bug. Like, report it as an issue. Help the devs, help you and our widest flight simulation family to give better products. And as a
by the way, just to clarify, it does say on the X-Plane 12 release notes on a website, X-Plane 12.0 is the initial version of the newest flight simulator from Laminar Research. Doesn't say it's a finished product.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that whole thing, folks. Of,
subject to change.
Of temper your expectations of what is it that you're getting into. If you're signing into a product that's early access, that's beta, that's essentially in this what do they call it, Sergio? Agile development.
Yes.
This is this whole agile development idea where content gets pushed out, gets iterated up really quickly. So you're going to see a lot of changes. If you're not okay with that, then don't sign up for something that's in early access, please, and just sit with the current product. Now, on the other side, and it's interesting that Drew, you sort of brought up the idea of and this is sort of an adjunct to tempering expectations, and will lead us to our next sim to talk about is. It's interesting that you mentioned that people were saying, and Sergio, you mentioned as well, people are saying, well, this is X-Plane 11.6. Why am I paying for what is essentially bug fixes. It's like, well, one, if you read the tech notes, it says there's a lot more than just bug fixes in this. Like, there are wholesale.
lot more,
There's like
yeah.
the volumetric,
Huge.
the 3D photogrammetry, the 3D cloud modeling that's
We
been
could
put in.
laundry list
OTC.
it, but by the same token, you can just put x-plane.com, go there, go to the release notes page. You will literally see everything that they have done to improve this sim.
So they've done a lot of that, but at the same time, I also understand why people and it's interesting. You sort of suggested that we look at it from the other side of going, why am I buying a version for a bug fix? Now I remember having this conversation for a lot of the early releases of Prepared and the revisions of Prepared, and looking at them and going, where does a bug fix and a major change come in? And I've owned all 5 versions of Prepared, and it is an interesting thought, because really for me, the only 2 that I felt valued an actual paid upgrade, and this is my opinion, was V4 and V5. V4 because we went to 64-bit, they finally dragged the code kicking and screaming to 64-bit, so 100% support that. And V5, there was the absolute nightmare mess of atomic clouds, but to be fair, it's a new rendering engine, and there was absolutely reason to do that. But the 1 to 3, the V1 to V2 to V3 transition, that's where I sort of tend to side with the people who sort of go, well, why am I paying for an upgrade? Why am I paying for the biannual release for this? Because the functionality that was added in, was it functionality? And that's where I'm curious about what your opinion. Where's that line between, because you're absolutely right. Yeah, when they rev up, we buy the new version, and it's like the whole thing where you say, well, people who are complaining about it's like, well, you're obviously new here, because as you said, we've seen this time immemorial. But what's that line? For putting on that whole of tempering our expectations. What's that line for us of going between a major release versus a bug fix? I'm curious.
I feel like this is something that I'm probably going to delve into a video soon from the standpoint of Airfly FS4.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been flying that sim more than I've been flying any of the other sims over the last weeks in preparation for finally doing my first look.
Mm.
And I'm still trying to gauge exactly how much additional content or functionality or what have you has warranted the change from 2 to 4. Not even 3.
Not even
That's
3.
still a mystery.
What happened
to 3? Nobody knows
No
except
idea.
IPAX.
It's the sibling we don't talk about.
2 to 4. Is it worth it? Is the value there? That question comes up a lot. And that's the kind of thing that I want to be able to delve into. So you'll probably be seeing that before you see any videos of X-Plane 12 because of the state that VR is in right now. But again, it's the whole tempering the expectations thing. I didn't know what I was getting with Airfly FS4 if it really warranted the changeover. I did the changeover, and honestly, I'm very happy with it. But just in flying it, in using it, I'm not seeing a whole hell of a lot of difference as I did with X-Plane 11 to X-Plane 12.
And just before I get you to continue that, Sérgio, just on Airfly FS4, like I looked at the release notes for it and was like, this is 2 with a new number. I didn't see anything to me. And again, to the communication piece, hey, IPAX, if you're watching, you need to get better at that. I looked at the list. I remember reporting on it on another app, and I'm going, this is 2. Like, it didn't look visually any different. It didn't have anything that screamed at me and said, this is worth $70. So yeah, sorry, continue.
No, I was going to say that it's a bit hard to actually draw a line in that whole is this a new version or is this just an update? Because it depends on a lot of different things. The IPEX example is a great example. I really like the IPEX guys. I like the team. I have a good relationship with them. I have talked to them quite a few times and told them that I feel the community is a bit lost in regards with the product, because we like the product. We want to like the product even more. We want to love the product even more. But it's kind of weird because we don't know where the sim is heading to. We don't know what's the roadmap. We don't know what lies ahead. And there are a lot of different things. IPEX is actually a good example because we can pinpoint a lot of things that we could say. We could say, okay, this would make it for a new version, as opposed to X-Plane, for example. It would be harder for me to tell you, okay, for X-Plane 13 to be X-Plane 13, this is what should change. Or perhaps it's not that difficult. Okay, like picking up the example of the scenery, I would say, okay, if Laminar Research grabs everything that they have done, they finish the sim, they finish X-Plane 12, perhaps an X-Plane 13 version would be something to do with the overhaul of the scenery. And I know Laminar Research is listening. I know Laminar Research wants to do something in regards with the scenery. Do not expect for photogrammetry to come out. Do not expect a clone of Microsoft Flight Simulator to come out. Temporary expectations there as well, but they are going to do something. I am sure of it, and Austin already hinted that quite a few times. Okay,
yeah.
So for X-Plane, I would expect something like that. For Aerofly, it's kind of weird to see quite a veteran sim, because Aerofly has been out there for a long time.
Since the original Aerofly, a long time, yeah.
Yeah, and they even have a mobile version as well, which a lot of people play it, and it's really fun. It's really nice. But for such a veteran program, for such a veteran piece of software, honestly, they haven't evolved that much. They haven't evolved that much. I was expecting to see some things on Aerofly FS 3, not even 4, 3. Again, no idea what happened with version 3, but I was expecting to see some things on version 3 that would make it a worthwhile version. No, I can tell you of at least 2 different things, which I could probably look at it and say, okay, this could work as a new version. If they added actual water, because we don't have water in Aerofly.
Yeah,
okay? Forgot about that.
Water,
we don't. Yep. It's just
water
imagery.
In Aerofly. It's just land with the image of water on top. Okay. And if they had perhaps road traffic to make the world a bit more alive, look a bit more alive, those 2 things alone could perhaps, be the reason for a major version change. Just because there's a lot of code involved. Go ahead.
Ironically, clouds. If they did what Laminar has done between 11 and 12, that right there would warrant a version change. So I guess that's the answer to the question regarding where is that line.
It's got to be, so essentially what I'm summing up here is that it's got to be something fairly significant, and not just we improved this performance, or we cleared this, cleaned this texture formatting up or something. It's a fairly, and that step change might be something behind the scenes, or it could be something very easily visible, but it has to be that sort of step change. So as I said, it was just an interesting sort of side sort of question that I wanted to ask. But that does lead us fairly neatly, though, into well, folks, apparently we had far more to say about this topic than even we thought we did. So, as a result, we are splitting this episode of the Three Grumpy Simmers into 2 parts. So that is going to conclude part 1 of our little discussion and exploration of the idea of tempering one's expectations. Join us very shortly for part 2, whether you are listening to us on the podcast or watching us on YouTube. Stay tuned for the second episode coming very, very soon.